Okay, just getting the Zoom meeting set up a little bit, some of the preferences here. This is the week 10 live Q&A. This is rescheduled a little bit. And so we'll see who shows up. It's summer, so I don't know how many people we will get today. But today the plan was, this is usually the time when I take the last Q&A and I just sort of, I go over my experiences from start to finish in the AAA game industry. I try to just relay my experiences taking level design tests. I feel like the level design tests are designed to really focus on some of the most important common concepts in level design. So I feel like just by going through and showing you what I did that got me a job or not, at least shows you the kind of thought process that a lot of the studios look for when they are when they're planning, when they're trying to figure out the kind of qualities they look for in level designers. I'm just going to check the forums here quickly, make sure everything's scheduled right, and make sure that I'm not missing any questions in the live Q&A. Let's see here. Nope, no questions right now. So I guess I'll just get right to it. It's maybe I'll wait a little bit longer. It's 7:02. I'll give it another 5 minutes. Then I'll just start popping up some images of some docs that I worked on. So if you're watching this recorded, I guess you could probably scrub ahead to wherever it is I start showing documents. It might be 5 seconds, it might be 5 minutes. Okay, I'm going to get started. It's about 5 minutes in. So when I got started in the industry, I worked as a modder for many years while I was doing professional commercial art. And I did it, I just pretty much modded, well, the game I modded most was Star Wars Jedi Academy back then. And I just did it, I ended up doing it enough where I decided I wanted to do it full-time as a job. So I realize a lot of times there's a lot of people who get into, they sort of get their foot in the door, so to speak, in studios. Designers get their foot in the door a lot of times. Programmers too. As a member of the QA department in a AAA studio, I luckily sidestepped that. I don't know how likely that is anymore. Back when I started, there was a, let me just pull this over. Back when I started, there was a studio called 3Wave Software. They kind of pioneered the capture the flag game mode in video games. They were a small studio in Vancouver. They did multiplayer components, multiplayer game modes for single player games. They were sort of contracted to do it. By the time I got there, they'd done, strangely, I didn't even know it at the time, but they'd been contracted to do multiplayer maps for Raven Software's Jedi Academy. Jedi Knight also, I think, I don't know. So anyway, it just turns out that that was the engine I'd worked in. It was the Quake 3 Radiant editor. I worked in that engine a lot. That was back when you used BSP and you didn't need a software program necessarily to do all of your geometry. So yeah, I showed them my maps. I applied for the job. This is the one map I did for Jedi Academy Peril in the Core. It was a game mode where players pretty much fought with lightsabers or weapons, and they fought in this vertical environment using force powers, using superpowered jumps, things like that. A lot of trick movements. It had things like jump pads that would boost you up into the air, tubes that would suck you in as you were jumping through the air, a death ray that could be pulled down to destroy players dueling down below, lots of hidden areas and Easter eggs, upper and lower floors, things like that. So I showed them these maps. This was one which is just it was a sci-fi lab that was split between two realities. One was it was pristine and very high tech. And then I had a future version where it was destroyed and overgrown with jungle vegetation, using only a few textures. It was mostly geometry. Yeah, so I just worked on this. That's the pristine version. That's the destroyed version. And yeah, that's the destroyed lab. That's the pristine lab, and you can see the characters lightsaber dueling there. So anyway, I did this kind of stuff for a while, and that I don't even know why. This is strangely, they didn't even give me a design test, which is probably not a good idea. You probably should have given me a design test. I think it just happened that I used the tools that they used, and they thought I used them well enough. So I guess they maybe, I don't really know, they thought it was good enough for them. So I got my first job at 3Wave Software. Hi Robin, thanks for joining. I think you're the only one in today. Today I'm just going over it's the the final Q&A, and so typically on the final Q&A I just I sort of go over my career in games, and I pretty much show the work that I did on a lot of not on the games I worked on, but on the level design applications for the different studios that I applied to or got a job with. My thought behind that is hopefully people can see, they can get a sense of the sort of skills and the sort of creations you're expected to be able to make when you're in these kind of positions. And it gives the tests are a good way to give you a kind of a checklist of the kind of work they want you to do, the kind of design principles they expect you to implement when you're doing your work, that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm just going to dig in and go through that. But you know, if today, since it's the last class, if you have any questions about this or anything else we've done, please feel free to chat me up the question. Okay, so let me see. I'll start with like I was just saying, three-wave software didn't have a test. After I left three-wave software, I applied for a studio in New York City, which isn't there anymore. They were the studio behind the original Homefront game. They were part of the THQ company, which is now defunct. This was for multiplayer level design. In fact, a lot of my early jobs were applying for multiplayer level design. The position at Three-Wave Software was a multiplayer level designer. That was the same at Chaos Studios. But I had this recurring pattern in my jobs where I was originally brought on board and hired to work on multiplayer and did for a while, but then the single player component of the game needed a lot of level building, a lot of design work. And so I ended up being drafted from the multiplayer team to the single player team because I was pretty quick at building spaces. So it kept happening a lot throughout the various studios I worked in. So yeah, they wanted you to design they wanted you to design a level based on kind of a real world location. Um, and so I built one based on a hydroelectric power plant. And you pretty much had to describe the bases of the two teams, since it's capture the flag, the bases where the flags were kept. This was a relatively small map in a large interior. So this was my floor plan. I wonder if I can quickly grab this and rotate it. We'll find out really quickly, won't we? I'm just gonna wait for Gayazo to open that up. Usually takes a minute. Yeah, so I do this a lot of times when I make documents. Documentation is something that this course doesn't really delve into too much, but it is important. It is important, and it's something that that you should be able to find a language, a visual language that works simply and works well in a document, where you can communicate your ideas behind your level design. You can communicate also generally 3D concepts in 2D. It's not always necessary. Not every studio does this, but a fair amount do. Okay, I'm going to try to grab this image really quickly here and open it in, I think Photoshop is installed on this computer, so I'm just going to grab this. And it's going to be 1 second here. Sorry about this. I forgot this was turned at a 90-degree angle. Okay, so let's see here. Go to desktop. Okay, Photoshop will open now in a minute. Okay, finally. Oh, wow, okay. I thought this would be easier than it is. I haven't opened Photoshop in a while. I'll make this. Okay, good enough. Okay, so yeah, anyway, quickly here. What I try to do when I document my work, a lot of times, if it's required by the design team, by the lead level designer or whatever, I pretty much just do it with a height map. I find it's the easiest way to get my ideas across. With the darker values being the lower positions, you know, and the later the value, the higher the position is. So you're aware that there's a low level to this map, and then there are staircases that lead up to higher positions here. Let me go back to the document here. Yeah, so this is a version of this, a similar version of the same map that works with, it works as a team deathmatch map. And again, I tried to show staircases or, staircases that lead in different positions. This is a lower level here. There's sort of a recessed blue area with water. I put low water. I also tried to do a map key when necessary. And again, I try to show the elevation scale in meters. I usually don't even get this complicated in an internal document at a studio. This was more for a design test, but it seemed important at the time. Interesting. Okay, so yeah, back to that. Okay, yeah. So so I also put in locations with letter values, just to later describe. I think it's in the other part of the document where I actually describe the different areas you're seeing in this map here. And I'll post a link. I haven't done this before, but I'll post a link to my Google Drive with all these documents. So if you guys want to dig into them and see more of them, you can take your time and look at them on the Google Drive. Yeah, so this shows the layout of based on Hoover Dam. And okay, oh, it moved on to the next document, didn't it? Interesting, okay. So yeah, that's the Chaos Studios test. Next, I worked on, after Chaos Studios, I applied to a couple different companies. I applied to Insomniac Games and I applied to Irrational Games. And I at that point, I was offered both jobs, and I ended up going to Irrational Games, but this is the test I did for Insomniac. They tell you this is the actual question part. I don't have the question parts of all my tests. Some parts I just have the answers. But this part, they talk about the aims they're looking for. They're looking for ways that you can help familiarize them with your overall design philosophy. And then the second, that's kind of a general game design question. And the second part is about a multiplayer team deathmatch map design. So they had some interesting questions here. A lot of times when you work on a level design test like this, one thing that comes up a lot is they want you to be familiar with the games they make. So if you're applying for a position at a game studio, if you haven't played their game, you're definitely going to have to go and play their game. The funny thing about this Insomniac game, at the time they were working on the Resistance series on PS2, and I believe they'd already put out Resistance 1 and 2, and they were at some point they were in the process of working on Resistance 3. So funny, I'd never played any of the Resistance games, so of course I bought Resistance 2 and I played it for the test because they had questions like this. They wanted you to know about the different character classes in Resistance 2. They have a lot of questions about game mechanics and game rules, things like that, game design. They had 3 classes in Resistance 2 with offensive and support abilities. They had a soldier, a medic, the spec ops. They wanted you to design a fourth class that would fit in with the other three, just to show how you understand how those classes work together. And this is important. I think this is an important question because a lot of times you'll be tasked with creating a level design, the geometry of a level design, and there will be a mission document that will describe the narrative aims, the story goals, the mission goals of the player, of the story. And but the thing is, sometimes you'll be designing a level that's maybe it's more or less made to just really use the game mechanics. Maybe it's made uniquely to use the game mechanics that are unique to your game. So they ask questions like this because they want to know, like, maybe different parts of a multiplayer map work better for different classes. I play a lot of Team Fortress 2, and it's definitely true in there. The same could probably be said for Overwatch, that kind of thing. And so they want to make sure you understand the game mechanics. And that's important too. Like in this course, we had the simple cowboy character, the steampunk kind of cowboy character that we were using as kind of a placeholder game mechanic to build around. And so when we built our levels for the game, we had to know, like, that character's jump height. We had to know they couldn't climb ladders, things like that. And we had to build for that character. So this is they ask you questions like this to make sure you understand those mechanics in their game that they publish, that they develop. So let's see, then documentation test, what is this? They want, design a new multiplayer mode for Resistance. They wanted you to actually design a new game mode. And so you weren't just using the typical, team deathmatch, capture the flag, survival mode, battle royale, that kind of thing. They wanted you to try to figure out a good new game design. Then you do a map design, and they give you all these very specific questions about the map design. They tell you it's a design for a 16 to 32 player Resistance team deathmatch map. They tell you the overall scale of the map. It's 150 meters in diameter. They want you to have 3 major areas, each that can support combat of at least 8 people or more. So that's for multiplayer, that idea of using landmarks and using districts and a node network is very important in multiplayer maps as well. Because players, when they play these maps, one of the important things we learned in multiplayer map design was the theming was very important in different locations of the map. The last multiplayer game I worked on was For Honor, and in that map we created landmarks, and they had to be easily selectable with a pre-selected system where you could tap the controller or tap a key on your keyboard, and it would tell people on your team something like, you were killed in the garden, or you were killed by the eagle statue, or you were killed by the well, or things like that. So we had to like theme things very concisely and very powerfully so that the players could easily just at a moment's notice be given a quick, like, 1 or 2 word description of a location and know that was the place to avoid or the place to run to, things like that. They also wanted you to know all the, again, back to game mechanics, they wanted you to know all the weapons they used in their game, the special weapons, the special power weapons, things like that. And they wanted you to talk about how you built your level to advantage or disadvantage players using those weapons. I should say give an advantage or give a disadvantage to players using those weapons. Right, so that's that. I think, I don't know if I have, yeah, I'm not sure if I actually have the completed test. I might have it here, although I don't know for sure. Just give me one moment. I have the other tests beyond this. Hmm. Well, I had a game mode called, let's see, actually, I might be able to upload this here. Let's see. I think this might be it. I have a lot of images from the design of the game mode. Is this it? No. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So this is right. This is the images I showed before, but this is the actual images with the description. I'm sorry. I'm glad I found this. Yeah, I talk about the areas in the map here. I show photo reference for the creation of the map. That's always important because this map you fought around these giant turbines. They were sort of the central blocker elements. And I don't know if that's might be the only one. Try uploading this. I may have created, I do a lot of, as you can see, I do a lot of 2D art in my tests and my documents, so I might have created this in Adobe Illustrator. That could be why I can't actually look at it. Oh, okay, this is the other half of the test. I named it really stupidly. So I created a class called the TechOps class, support class. I talked about the key aspects of multiplayer maps. I talked about mechanics to promote teamwork. I cited other games. A lot of times they want you to talk about other games and cite examples from other games that stand in for good. Oh, you're having a hard time getting my video feed. Okay, I'm sorry. Thanks for letting me know. I could try starting this over. Let me go back to the. Let's see. I'll go check the forums here. Maybe I can restart this. Oh, thanks for posting the link too. Okay, I'm just replying here. Oh, wait. Ryan got in. Yeah, I might restart this anyway. So, Robin, you were able to start normally with the join button? Is that right? Oh, okay. I guess you had to open Zoom. Yeah, this happened once before. Not this semester, but a different semester. Okay. I'm going to let me ask. River and Ryan, can you hear me okay? You can hear. Can you see? Well, right now I'm going over level design tests, but can you see like these images okay that I'm doing now? Robin had said that you don't have video. Hmm. Okay, I think I know what might be going on. Let's see. Okay, something just exploded here. Hold on. Okay. Yeah, I think that's me. I think somehow I clicked off the share, and I don't know how that happened. Sorry, guys. That's okay. I'm going to revisit a few things here because I feel like this got kind of botched. All right, so let's see here. Okay, I won't go over everything from start to finish, but yeah, I was just trying to show this time around this last Q&A. I tried to show design tests that I worked on when I applied to different studios, whether I got the position or not, because it's a good way to show the various things, the various important concepts that the design studios want to make sure you understand, and they're important for every level designer to understand, and or they're important for you to understand about their game. Sometimes it's very specific like that. Um, so yeah, so I'll go into the first test I took again. Let's see. It was, oh boy, right, Chaos Studios. Okay, so yeah, Chaos Studios, they asked for me to design a multiplayer map. My early work was all in multiplayer level design. I typically was hired for that, and then I was oftentimes brought over to do map creation jobs in the single player part of the game because I was fairly fast at it, and they needed all the help they could get. So that happened a lot. Chaos Studios, at the time I applied for them, they'd released a game called Frontlines, and eventually they were starting the creation of their Homefront game. They didn't know what it was called at the time, but they knew it was going to have a multiplayer component in addition to a single player campaign. It was very much trying to sort of compete with Call of Duty with a fairly lesser budget. Um, but so they wanted it to have this large scale combat mode, but they wanted me to design a multiplayer map. I believe it was in the mode of my choosing, so I chose Capture the Flag. Um, and this is the image of the map that I guess I thought I showed before, but it turns out I didn't because the sharing was off. This was the Capture the Flag map using a hydro station. And so what I was talking about earlier, which you can now actually see what I'm talking about, thank God. Right. Okay. When I create a lot of 2D documentation of my level design, I normally always use a height map to convey the various heights of the level design. The darkest values here being the lowest points, and the highest values being the highest points, with the exception of the black outlines around everything, which doesn't make sense given the height map colors I just told you. So yeah, this was a simple map where I laid out, I tried to show where the bases were for the red team and the blue team. I tried to show where staircases were with arrows. I always provide a small map legend to show the elements in 3D that wouldn't be easy to see in 2D. So yeah, some of these get more detailed than I probably would do uh, in an in-house design document, simply because you're able to talk to people, in your department, in your studio, and you don't need to all the time spell everything out quite this much. But still, this was for a test, so it's better to be more clear than less clear. And yeah, that's the general kind of design visual language I use for 2D documents. But I feel like if you can make your document look pretty, it convinces people, it gives people confidence in what you're doing. And most importantly, it conveys your intention in doing it. But this is your classic capture the flag map where it's kind of an inverted image from left to right. I think I did that quickly in one of the earlier demos this semester. So yeah, this basically relies on, that's a nice thing about capture the flag maps. They rely on like 50% design, and then you get to flip it and maximize it for less work. And this is not the same map. I know now, never mind. Okay, so we'll go back to, let's see, Chaos Studios. Okay, yeah, so also I included some reference images just to show that this was based on a real location, that these things here with the sort of cross beams were large generator pylons in the hydroelectric plant. They are based off of these shapes here from actual hydroelectric large-scale power plants in dams. So it's good, again, it's good to use photoreference and prove that photoreference is your friend. This is a blockout I did at the time. This was in Unreal Engine 3. And I did a quick blockout, and I'm pretty sure I uploaded and packaged up the map, the Unreal Map, so they could open it and run around in it. But these are the pylons. I tried to show things like one-way jumps, health pickups, attacker paths, defender paths. And the funny thing is, a version of this layout was I actually used a layout kind of based on this layout. In the first game I worked on at 3Wave Software, which was the Raven software version of Wolfenstein, where they had a multiplayer component that 3Wave did. And there was a Nazi power plant that was based on this that I built in Quake 3 Radiant. So yeah, so I describe, like I actually, typically I put letters to describe areas of the map, A, B, A, D, D, C, E, things like that. And I actually describe things about the various strategies the defenders and attackers can use when they play the map. And these are, I'm not sure why I included these. These are early, showing my work process. I tried to show what my map looked like as I worked in it. Yeah, so some old images there. So yeah, guys, I said this before to Robin before he graciously told me that I screwed up the video sharing. I'd mentioned before that if you have any questions, please interject, because this is stuff that I know that I just try to share with you guys, because it's a lot of work that went into taking these tests. I just feel like the perspective, I think, is useful, because all these studios have different ways of trying to express what's important to them, and it's good to see that. So if you have questions, shout out, and I'll answer them as fast as I can. Okay, so I worked at Chaos Studios for like 2.5 years on the multiplayer and single player on Homefront. I ended up building a lot of. I built a couple multiplayer maps based on a big box store like a Walmart, and another one based on like a highway interchange. I think I talked about this a little bit. Maybe I think a little bit during some of the Q&As. But yeah, again, I documented these as well. I tried to make this thing based on reality. This was based on what I thought was a fairly realistic description of a large, like a store like a Walmart, or a really large store with that's, I'm not sure what a good analogy is besides Walmart. That's what I keep thinking, but where they have different sections to the stores, like they have in-store groceries, in-store garden centers, checkout lanes in the front, food courts, what else? Changing rooms, yeah, layaway, garden center, auto repair in the back, and then like shipping and receiving in the back. And this whole map was built with the two teams, the USA versus the North Koreans. That's what the fiction was in the multiplayer game, and it involved pushing like a front line forward or backward by capturing points along the front line. So we actually had to create spaces with theming. Again, going back to that idea of districts, we had to create districts within the store to place these capturable these strategic positions that move the game forward. So that's how we worked on that. And the other one was more of a large scale, game mode. It was the like the first map I just showed you was an infantry only map, but Homefront had a pretty big. It also had a full scale infantry and vehicle mode, which was much bigger. The maps got much bigger. They tended to be outdoors. They were outdoors for the most part, with interiors that you could enter during combat. This is kind of similar to, I guess, like maybe Battlefield Rush mode or something like that, which I played a little bit of, but not too much. And we tried to theme these areas as well. I tried to make a fairly realistic highway interchange here, with a bridge over the main road, some on-ramps onto the highway. I tried to show where the playable area was, and what was off in the vista was red. I showed the capturable points. I tried to show the theming, like junkyard was one theme, water tower was another. The area in the middle was always on the road. So when players spent their in-game currency that they earned by killing others, like battle points, if they spawn in, the next time they spawn in, they can spawn in a helicopter, in a tank, in an armored personnel carrier, in a Humvee, and they could now drive all over the map and try to capture the points with their vehicles, and the infantry would try to fight them off. And then when we built these maps, we had to figure out a complicated series of routes that, again, they supported the game mechanics. And this is something I talked a little bit about in a lot of the reviews and some of the Q&As about how in this course, when we build our assignments, we try to build them so they support the existing mechanics we have, even though they're limited. The existing mechanics that we have of the steampunk cowboy character for our player character, we need to build it, those spaces so that they support the player's height, width, their jumping ability, their jumping distance, combat, things like that. So when we built these very large scale maps, we planned out places where infantry could go and places where vehicles could go. Typically the vehicles were somewhat more restricted, and the infantry had areas that were high risk, where their paths would cross with vehicles. And obviously if you're on foot, you don't want to, you want to try to avoid too many confrontations with the tank. Or you want places where there's overhead cover from helicopters that could fire down on you. So we had to actually plan out the whole map for those two eventualities. So that's kind of complicated. So okay, I'll go back to the test now. And so yeah, after Chaos Studios closed down, I applied for a couple different positions, and I applied to Insomniac Games, and I applied to Irrational Games. At the time I was offered both positions, but I went to Irrational. But we'll have a look at the Insomniac Games. And I know I'm going over this again, so I apologize, Robin, but at least you can see it this time. So yeah, this is the Insomniac multiplayer design test. They split their test into two parts. They wanted you to know their game, which at the time, their game was the Resistance series. They were beginning work on Resistance 3 when they were looking to hire a new level designer. This was again for multiplayer. They wanted to know, they wanted you to design a new character class that fit in a fourth class that was added to the 3 existing classes they had in their multiplayer game. They wanted to make sure you understood the design philosophy behind their game, and you could augment it with your own additions. So they wanted you to design a fourth character class. They also want to know things about what you consider important aspects of a good multiplayer map. They want to know that you can reference other examples from existing games to make your points. Let's see. They want to know how teamwork is promoted with game mechanics in different games that you play. And then they want you to make a design document. They wanted to create a new game mode that uses their game mechanics, but it doesn't conflict with their existing multiplayer game modes. And then lastly, they want you to create a map design, and they tell you that the parameters of the map design, it's a 16 to 32 player Resistance team deathmatch map. They also have other constraints. They tell you the overall scale of the map, 150 meters in diameter. They talk about theming of districts, which is really important in multiplayer again. They want you to have 3 major areas. Also game mechanics, they want the 3 major areas, they want you to create them with the idea of creating advantages or disadvantages for different character classes. Also for different weapon loadouts, things like that. They tell you the basic scale suggestions, which is great. These are things that you'd normally get if you work on a game. You'd be given very specific things like crouch covers 1.25 meters high, fill covers anything over 2.2 meters, good corridor widths. They tell you all that stuff. So if I go back here, well, let's go back. I should have, was this the test? Yes, so yeah, that was the, no, that's not it either, I'm sorry. Right, so these are my answers to the test. And I said before, I think before you other 2 guys joined, I'll post a link to my Google Drive with all these documents so you can read them thoroughly. There's a lot of stuff to go over, but it's cool to see the thought process, I think, again, that the studios use. So yeah, so my first thing was I designed a new class. The class was the Tech Ops class. I don't remember all the specific things. I gave them a special weapon called the Kinetic Resonance Converter. Who knows? It was very sci-fi, which is cool. Sci-fi is fun. You can justify whatever you want with sci-fi. It's always kind of nice. It's kind of like magic. Then I tried to define what I thought were the key aspects of multiplayer map. I cited different examples. Mechanics to promote teamwork. I brought up Team Fortress 2 because I played way too many hours of that game to this day. I designed a new game mode called Outbreak, and I created simple documents to show the rules of that game. And then I went on to my map design, and again I used the visual language I talked about before, where in my documents I try to use the height map to show the various heights of the level. This one got really in depth. Because it was for a test, I even told exactly what the different shaded values meant in terms of height in meters, which isn't something I would normally do if it weren't for a test. In an internal studio document, I wouldn't go that far. I've made it clear, like where there are falling hazards, I put red dotted lines on here. Yeah, I put where crouch cover was with dotted lines around little spaces, and actual crouch cover. Not even sure, crouch low wall, crouch cover, I don't know. Yeah, so I tried to differentiate all that stuff. And that's the lower level of the hydro station. So yeah, I reused the hydro station idea from my capture the flag map from Chaos, and I converted it from a capture the flag to a TDM map, which pretty much means like this whole map, this whole area here in the previous tests map, this whole area here was used for the team base, and I created a middle section to fight over in between the hydro station. Doesn't hurt to reuse your work, that's for sure. If you can, and you're reusing work that no one's seen before, go for it, because time is against you, and it's definitely good to be more efficient that way whenever you can. So yeah, then I describe things, my reference photos here. I talk about using the different weapons of Resistance 2, and there you go. Okay, so yeah, so then afterwards, this will be a long discussion, this next one. So I hope you're awake. Right, so I took the Irrational Games test, which was a very exhausting test. It was there was a lot of work involved. They wanted me, this was before BioShock Infinite came out, and at the time they were planning a co-op mode for BioShock Infinite. They hired me to work on the co-op mode. So again, I was hired for multiplayer, not versus, not PvP, but PvE. So yeah, so they hired me to do that. And the game hadn't been released yet. So BioShock Infinite is a very unusual game world with very unusual game mechanics. So they asked me a lot of questions based on their E3 video they'd released at the time. So I pretty much spent a lot of time like freeze framing the E3 video, everything I could think of that seemed to be expressing, a game mechanic or the kind of gameplay you would expect to find in the game, so that when I built my my prototype map of a BioShock Infinite space, it would seem believable from not only gameplay perspective, but also um, from the sort of hierarchical reality, the architecture, the theming of the districts of a floating city. Like that's what they wanted to see from me if I was able to imagine such a thing. So firstly, they asked me to, they asked me to describe, well, I guess different examples, different approaches to co-op game design that I'd played. My examples were Resident Evil 5, Gears of War, Left 4 Dead, things like that. Alien Swarm, I guess, yeah. And I tried to show the strengths and weaknesses. They wanted me to discuss the strengths and weaknesses of those games, so that they wanted to know that I could critically analyze gameplay and provide suggestions for improvement. So I talked about the enemy types, how they promote teamwork in Left 4 Dead. I'd worked at 3-Way Software. I'd worked on a Ghostbusters co-op game mode. I created a game mode called Protection for that, with some scripting in that engine, and I think that was maybe one of the reasons they were interested in hiring me, is because I'd actually worked on a co-op game mode, and there's not a ton of people that have done that. It's kind of a weird thing. It's more common now, I'd say, but probably less common then. So yeah, I sort of analyzed and broke down the game mode, how it worked, strengths and weaknesses, the overall concept behind it to promote teamwork. And then they wanted me to go in and, because that studio was incredibly narrative focused, they wanted me to, in fact, I'll have to look and see if I have the original, I don't know if I have the original test with the questions. Probably not. Let me look again under here. Let's see. Nope. Okay, well, I have the answers anyway, which is probably the more important part. Sorry, I'm just bouncing around here accidentally. Okay, so yeah, I'll try to dig up the questions too and post them on here. So yeah, they wanted you to design an encounter that could have happened in the BioShock game. And it's funny, this was kind of similar a little bit in ideation compared to the Insomniac test, where they wanted you to insert a 4th character class into their 3-character class game design. So the level design or the mission design kind of BioShock had you, I believe it had you killing like 3 of this one guy's disciples, this guy named Cohen. So they wanted you to create a new character who could have been a disciple of Cohen. So you had to kind of try your hand at writing like a story into your mission, which is important because for a studio like that, the story informs the level design informs the story, back and forth. But I think because the studio was headed by a writer, someone who was originally a writer, they found it very important that you had a strong narrative behind everything you were designing. So I created this idea of his 4th disciple also being involved in the arts like Sandra Cohen was. She was a ballet dancer who performed dance pieces based on music composed by Cohen. So you find out things, you find audio logs that told you that she was once distantly in love with Sandra Cohen and he spurned her advances, etc. So she lives in a dance studio. She had a dance studio in the city of Rapture. I had to like devise that idea too. So then you had to design the dance studio. You had to design the flow, the mission design of the dance studio. This idea when you entered the studio was really creepy because everyone was psychotic from the use of the gene splicing and Rapture. They were all like homicidal maniacs kind of, and did very strange things. So when you enter the space, you had this idea where dancing at one end of the stage was Anna Wingate, the disciple you were sent to kill. And you saw like humanoid statues almost like made from paper mache or something like that, in various dance poses throughout the hall of the dance studio. So there was this idea where you'd walk through the hall like this toward Anna, and as you moved by the various figures, you'd find some of them were human and they moved and they'd attack you, maybe things like that, just to give a sense of creepiness to the whole scene. Then you had to actually do like an AI design for Anna Wingate. She was like a special boss splicer. So she had special abilities. She was like a combination Houdini spider splicer, meaning she teleported from the floor to the ceiling and crawled along the ceiling. And when she was up there, she would throw hand fans with blades on them down at the player, things like that. She wore a white ballet dress and a bird mask. So just this whole like creepy vibe. They wanted to see if you understood that kind of feel of things in Rapture. So that was my take on that, really. Then you had to analyze the combat of BioShock, the strengths and the weaknesses. Then let's see. Again, you had to design new game mechanics for BioShock. So they wanted a new weapon idea and a new plasmid idea. The plasmid I had was Killer Plant. You could shoot seeds out of your hands that would, when they got lodged into the ground, they would spring up into plants that grabbed enemies who wandered too close. So that was like my idea for a new plasmid. It's funny though, I failed pretty hard on the weapon, I think, because I hadn't played BioShock 2, which to me, I didn't bother because it wasn't Irrational Games, even though apparently it has some really good bits in it. And I proposed some kind of an aquatic hunting rifle, which was apparently really similar to a spear gun that was in BioShock 2, and I didn't know that. So, right. So part 3, you had to create a map in the engine of your choice that that was your version of an area of the city of Columbia that used the skylines. If you weren't familiar with that, the skylines in the city of Columbia and BioShock Infinite were these overhead rails that ran and twisted around the buildings from suspended supports that were originally built to transport cargo hanging from them. But the player gets a device called a skyhook, and they can actually jump on the lines and ride them like a roller coaster, hanging from them with one hand and shooting with the other. So they wanted to see if you could create that kind of a level environment in the engine of your choice. So I did. I created it at the time. I have no idea why I chose the Call of Duty Radiant editor. So I built it in Call of Duty. I think because at the time I hadn't done any work in a 3D modeling program. It was all pretty much BSP, and Call of Duty let you build in BSP. So I decided to do that. I created the map in BSP. I gave them instructions on how to run the map. And let's go back. I can show you. So I sent it to them, and waited a long while for them to review it. And then after that, they wanted a lot more detail. They had a lot of questions, and I kind of had to do almost, for the amount of work it was kind of the equivalent of a second test. This whole process took over a month to apply for this job. And yeah, they took a long time. That was a very picky studio. So what I did is I took screenshots of the 3D map that I built. This is it here. And I actually placed floating letters on the different parts of the map. And then in this document, I then actually identified what it was they were looking at when they saw, for instance, the letter A. Letter A was an air traffic control tower. It controlled the traffic of airships and other things that flew around the city. yeah, it gave them sort of a perch to look out into the skies and radio the flying objects flying around the city. Then we had like a docking platform here, again, trying to make this seem like it's based in reality. This shows, I tried to show where shipping containers could be attached to the skylines, and you could see like there'd be a platform for them to stop, be unloaded, and then sent along their way to be refilled. Then there was one area here where there was a skyline that passed down into this low station, and fuel could be delivered from that position. In the lower levels of my version of Columbia, I had things like here was a blacksmith, just various sundries that people would need if they lived in the city. District gates, there was a department store at this level. Yeah, these were gates that would just lead off into some other area of the city that wasn't built. Again, this is the lower street level. This shows where there'll be a makeshift, not a makeshift, but a proposed police station here, just to show you things that would exist in a real city, but I was trying to show where they could seem logical in a floating city. Here, this was a large building, which was kind of like a banking building called the financier's office. And then it was adjacent to this building called the Borman Hotel, where rich people would stay, and then they would maybe they'd take an appointment at the nearby financier's office to check on their investments or their wealth. The hotel had things like a patio, a veranda, sort of where parties could be held. The Borman Hotel and Casino, that's what I mentioned before. It talks about how it has shipping directly to the hotel. It has its own skyline to receive shipments there. Yeah, the hotel private freight. There it is there. This is the street cargo delivery. Let's see. And again, I added little story elements, like there was a park named after Miranda Borman, who I said was like the daughter of the man who built the hotel. She apparently jumped to her death off the edge of the city there, so they named it after her. At the lower levels, there were these, they called them bottom garden apartments. They were these apartments down underneath all of the tracks, so they were very noisy and dirty, and it's like, it's pretty much acting almost like the movie Metropolis, where the poor underclasses live on a physical, not only do they live in a lower echelon of society, but they also live, it's mirrored by the fact that they live physically lower than other people in the city, in the sky. It sort of shows you that the class system is alive and well in Columbia. And again, these are story ideas where whether you're asked to do them or not, it's great to put some thought into it yourself, because it'll inspire things you're building. If you start having a story where there is none, and maybe people don't need to know the story, maybe you need to know the story, but it always helps. So yeah, this is the back entrance of the skyline. This is the skyline that goes over the veranda. That's the hotel overpass. Okay, so yeah, they wanted me to go through and like identify everything, just so they believed that I knew what I was building. Like I kind of knew this stuff. I definitely embellished it after they asked for more detail, but yeah, it's good to do that on your own. Okay, so let's see here. After I left Irrational, I applied to a couple places, a few places. One was Naughty Dog, and one was Rockstar New England. I didn't get the job at Rockstar New England, which is probably lucky for me. I don't know. Maybe that's sour grapes. I don't know. Only because from what I understand at the time, it sounded to me as if their work hours were not very friendly. But we'll have a look at that one. So yeah, this one was partially scripting, so I won't talk about it too much. They do a lot of, their level designers do a lot of scripting in what is kind of, I don't really know. I heard they have their own almost like scripting / programming language. So they wanted to know you knew basics of scripting, which I did. So I gave my answers to this stuff, but that's not really, they wanted to know you could do basic things like you could shuffle a deck of cards with a script. You could script a door that opens and closes, things like that. Let's see. they wanted to make sure you understood the sort of logic that's necessary to do scripting. But then they also wanted you to, in the design section, this is what I was trying to get to, this wasn't about building geometry so much. This was about, I don't know, I guess game design, mission design. They wanted you to come up with a new weapon or vehicle for Grand Theft Auto. My idea was a cherry picker vehicle, which is one of the trucks that have a large extendable arm where a worker sits in the basket at the top of the arm and does work at an elevated position. So I thought this could be interesting to use in kind of a very Grand Theft Auto-y way. So it could be done so that, well, maybe in multiplayer, one person could drive it, the other person could sit in the cherry picker. But it could also be used to allow the player to reach higher areas if they use the cherry picker to elevate their position. Maybe they can get on top of a building they couldn't normally. Yeah, so I tried to describe how I would pitch this idea to programmers, pitch its roles in mission designs, and then I actually had to come up with a mission design, which was the idea was an assassination mission where you were hired for a hit on a wealthy guy. I forget what he was a tycoon of some kind. You were hired to hit him, to take him out. So this idea was you had to steal a cherry picker from the power company. You had to drive the cherry picker near his estate, and then once you reached the edge of the estate, which was a walled estate, the idea was you would get in the cherry picker, raise it to its maximum height where you could see over the walls, and you could snipe him down by his pool. And then once that was over, you had to flee the scene. So that was like basically how they wanted you to think about their game. Yeah, so then this question is not a good question. You're stranded on a desert island. That's never a good question. You can choose any 5 games. So if you're smart, you put their game in the mix. Just saying. Pick a game you played recently. Yeah, they just want to know like where your mind is at with design philosophy. So I'll go back to Naughty Dog. Right, I don't know if I have, let's see. Do I have, I'll try to upload this maybe. Okay, did it upload offsite? Okay, so yeah, this is, oh good, I have that, that's nice. This is, they want you to, Naughty Dog was interesting the way they worked. Oops, I lost my chat window, hold on. Okay. Yeah, so Naughty Dog, it's interesting because this is where Amelia works right now, apparently. I applied for this job and I can't remember what was going on when oh, right, that's right. This is, okay, I know what's going on here. Yeah, so I didn't complete this test. I think this might have been the one I took when I was applying at Irrational too. So I'd got some interviews, I completed the design test, but I didn't take this job. This was for the multiplayer team. Because there's always a multiplayer component, well, there were anyway in the Uncharted and the Last of Us games. And I was actually recommended for this job by my former lead designer on Homefront at Chaos Studios. He's now the lead designer on multiplayer at Naughty Dog. Yeah, so they wanted to know, they wanted you to create an objective-based multiplayer map in the Uncharted universe. And they describe, yeah, they describe all the goals of the game mode. It was an interesting game mode. It was one that was kind of designed like almost like a story mission, but it completes in stages. Like the players compete in stages, and then sort of cinematic events happen in between the stages of the mode. I think they finally did release this mode in Uncharted 3, I want to say. I kind of can't remember. I never played it. I ultimately didn't play it. But yeah, anyway, I wanted to mention the rules of this test were unusual. They told you beforehand that you would only have 4 hours to complete the test. So what that meant was you would schedule a time and date and time, and at that time you would be given 4 hours. You'd be emailed the test at that proposed time and date, and you would be given 4 hours to complete it from the time you received it. So that's a lot of stress. It pretty much means you have to really, before you set up a time and date, you really have to be familiar with their game, and possibly sketch out some ideas for multiplayer maps that you can then kind of Frankenstein together into a map that would work for this new game mode they're talking about. So I did, and I came up with, where is it? Naughty Dog, okay. I came up with this location of a gorge in the Andes of South America. It was based on an ancient ceremonial site that was under pillaging from a group of like sort of unscrupulous, I don't know, looters, I guess. So the heroes, there were two teams, the heroes and the villains. The heroes had to steal the treasure from the temple because the villains were going to, I don't know, use, yeah, it's a weird test constraint. Yeah, I mean, it worked out okay. I can't say they were going to give me the job, but they wanted to move forward with my interviews after the job. But after I completed the test, but like I said, I just realized before I did it that I just had to really prepare and like come up with a whole bunch of like ideas that I could then take together and use for a game mode. And I mean, I think they also realized they're not going to get the most polished proposal in 4 hours, but they just want to see they want to see some strong ideas included in here. I'm sure there are plenty of problems with what I submitted, but I think they like the general core ideas mostly. Yeah, so the idea was the heroes steal the treasure from a temple. They deliver it to a truck 3 times in 10 minutes, sort of unloading the treasure from the temple. And the villains prevent the heroes from stealing it. At the end of that round one, you propose like a cinematic. So if the heroes win, the heroes all climb in the back of the truck. The engine roars to life. The bridge starts shaking violently. As the heroes run to safety, the bridge collapses, sending the truck crashing into the riverbed. The heroes must now rescue their treasure from the riverbed. And then if the villains win, the villains grab the treasure from the truck and back to the temple just as one of them launches an RPG at the truck, destroying it and the bridge in a fireball and a shower of wooden debris. So you have to think about like, it's sort of like a multiple choice movie sort of plays out when you play this whole thing. This isn't my idea. This is like their idea for a game mode. This is me just plugging in events that could happen. So then they have to move a treasure from the truck to the helicopter. And again, the villains prevent the treasure from being stolen 3 times. If the round 2 is completed, the heroes all jump into a helicopter. The villains fire at them to no effect as the helicopter rides off into the sunset. If the villains win, they grab the treasure from the helicopter, and then they launch an RPG at the helicopter, destroying it in a fireball. So this was the map I proposed for that. It's basically, it starts here like on the left side of the map and it pushes it across this river that crosses this gorge through the Andes. And, I tried to show things like, I don't even know if I got all the mechanics right in here. I tried to propose things where the players could climb because that was the thing in Uncharted. So the players could climb on orange surfaces. They could jump where I showed a jumpable distance, things like that. I tried to use the visual language of the height map to show the lower and the higher areas. And that's the truck in the middle. They're carrying it from the temple to the truck in the first stage. So it's finding a safe way to get to the truck. And then once the truck falls in the river, the heroes try to steal the treasure from the truck and get it to the helicopter. And then that's the final win condition. And I describe here, just as always in most of these tests, I tried to label and describe each theme, which is, again, the thing we did in our district assignments. I tried to describe the themes, elevated road in the middle, river and a bridge in the center. They're passing perpendicular to that. The native halls, you want to try to say where there are spawn locations. The spawns move based on the success or fail and the stage conditions of the map. Radio towers, they're just like side positions that you can use to sort of create flanks. Yeah, so I just you try to describe how all these locations are used in the overall strategy of winning or losing the map, really. Robin has a question. I can't formulate a single question, so I'll go right to the point. Okay. I'm 24 years old, French, and I left a game design school after 3 years of studies without a degree. It was not worth the money. After that, I studied user experience and psychology, especially learning theories and cognition for a year. Oh, that's pretty cool. After that, I did a lot of different jobs, but never within the game industry. Basically, I'm currently looking for an entry position, and I just love level design. I'm working on a website to show some of my best work. Do you have any advice for me? Thank you. Yeah, I've been asked this a few times. There's been a few other students who asked me similar questions. They asked me kind of portfolio related questions where they often had, it sounds kind of like you have a somewhat of a variety of interests, but you have ones, like you said, level design, which interests you more than the others. So what I would say is, I mean, I haven't seen your website, but by all means, I'd be totally happy to give you kind of a review of the website if and when you have it open, because I find a lot of times when people haven't done that much level design work, they tend to show a little bit of everything they've done, and usually you want to try to prune it down to the most important things that are going to present you as people want to. It's sad, but people want to try to what's the word? They want to try to label you as a very specific thing. There's the job titles we have today, whether it's in the game industry or any industry, the titles people have nowadays are so ultra specific. And this is, there's some articles people have written about this. There's no more room for the quote unquote Renaissance person, Renaissance man or whatever, who is able to do a little bit of everything. That's fine in the indie game space, but when it comes to the AAA game industry, you could be like senior advanced rendering lighting programmer or, that kind of thing. Even when they do like level design, even that gets split into multiplayer and single player, At Naughty Dog, they only have what they call a designer position. And it involves a lot of things. It involves like game design, level design, what else? Mission design. It involves a lot of different little sub categories of tasks. So anyway, my point is, yeah, that's the thing you want to do is you want to try to find the things you like doing the most about level design and put them in your portfolio, because whenever you show portfolio work, that you want to be wary of showing work that isn't aligned enough with the things that you want to do the most, because if you don't, you end up getting a lot of work that way, and you could end up being labeled as the person who does the thing that you don't really want to do. This happened to me to some degree when before I did level design. I worked only partially successfully, not really that successfully, as a level designer, not a level designer, as a commercial illustrator. So I did art for a long time for money. And I did a lot of projects that they earned me some money, but not a ton. And I didn't really enjoy them. They weren't that creative. In fact, some of them were horrible. But then you put those pieces in your portfolio, and if you don't at least provide a counterpoint to those pieces, like maybe personal projects that also focus more on the things that you want to do, then people will only see the things that you did successfully, but you don't really want to continue doing. but anyway, beyond that, when you do get around to organizing a portfolio, I think one thing that's great is if you look through these tests and you look at the aims uh, that I tried to fulfill in the tests, and you look at the kind of questions that I was asked, the kind of ideas that I was asked to show, I think that those are pretty good guidelines for things to include in your portfolio, especially if it's a relatively new portfolio with not like a ton of industry work or any industry work. I think that would be good to really convey your understanding of the medium, to really convey your understanding of game modes, like that you can break it down analytically, that you're able to build spaces that really suit the needs of various different games, or especially the kind of games you want to work on. Because the kind of games like that this course focuses on, the work that Amelia's done, the work that I've done, it's all kind of shooter games, action games. It's third or first person. I've worked on third and first person games. They're very specific, but obviously if you want to work on an RPG, MMO, an RTS, all the acronyms in the world, then obviously those are very different kind of skills. And you probably won't be hired once the game modes diverge too much from action, from action, shooting, that kind of thing. Um, if you've done work, I should say, if you've done work in one genre that's too different from a different genre, you're probably just going to continue working in that genre. So make sure it's one you like. But yeah, just maybe even in your portfolio, present examples, almost as if you take these design tests. In fact, if you want, you can use these tests as a basis for personal projects. Because one thing, even when I did illustration, I did it for years, and I had a fair amount of actual like professional work in that portfolio, but I still like by the time I stopped doing it, I still had a lot of pieces that were completely um, like self-promotion. They were nothing. They were they were only created for me to show the kind of work I wanted to do. So if you don't have a lot of work, make projects for yourself in the engine of your choice, and like maybe go through these kinds of tests. Maybe make a map that's based on a game that you really like. Like imagine, like take your favorite game and make like a map that you think is like it's gonna like one up, it's gonna best all the maps that they ever made for that game. I mean, honestly, that's kind of why I started doing modding. I don't know if it was an ego trip or what, but I wanted to try to do maps that were, in my mind, they satisfied what I wanted to see in that game that I was modding, or I wanted to do what I thought could be done better in those games. That's debatable if I succeeded, but I like to think that I tried, and that's what you want to try to do. Okay, so River has a question. Next Monday, I will have a call about environment artist on contract in California. Oh, congratulations. I just applied the position. Then they make an email. They said the next step they would love uh, to have a phone call to know me a bit more and go over the process in more depth. In the post, I always make the test first, then get the phone test. Oh, in the past. Okay. So my question is, the call still is a part of the test? How can I prepare for this one? I'm an international student, so I think my English is the biggest challenge for the call. And for an international student, it's more difficult to get a job in the US, right? How many foreigners in the Naughty Dog studio? Um, it's a good question. I don't, I really don't know much about the immigration process for a foreign worker. I wouldn't be qualified to give you a good answer about that. But I can answer the part of your question about is the call still a part of the test? If it's, you should assume that anytime they're talking to you about a job that you want from them, assume it's part of the test. Just assume it is. And I would probably make a lot of notes about things that you want to say in the interview about your abilities, or questions you want to ask them about how they work in their studio. Because a lot of times in an interview, some candidates, when they are being interviewed, they will wait to be asked questions. They'll allow the interviewer to steer the entire interview, and whenever possible, you want to be in control of that interview as much as possible. So without without being asked, you want to try to promote yourself whenever possible. So um, I would definitely have topics. Take some notes about some topics that um, you would like to mention about your own work, or topics that involve questions about how the employer does work within their studio. Yeah, I think that's the best answer I can give you about that. Yeah, about I don't know though about how difficult to get a job in the U.S. I mean, I know applying for work permits anywhere isn't that easy. I don't know, like right now you're in the U.S. I believe you were at Savannah College of Art and Design. Was that true or not? Um, so I imagine you're in the U.S. on a student visa. Is that correct? Because yeah, because I'm just guessing. I could be wrong, but I would think that a student visa is different from a work visa. Um, but that's honestly it's okay to ask this potential employer that question too. I mean, ask them um, if they know about your status, and it's okay, you know, because they'll be able to provide you with a better answer about that than I can. Um, okay, let's see here. I'm going to get a link to this here, and I'm going to go to the forum. And I'm going to post this here. Hopefully it's good reference. Actually, I wonder if that's, is this, I'm sorry guys, is this the drive? Okay, I gotta fix this later. Yeah, so I'm gonna fix this so that this is a link that allows everyone to view it. I'll make sure I get that set up after I sign off here. But anyway, yeah, if to all you guys, to anyone who's here right now listening to this, or anybody who watches this recording later, yeah, feel free to send me links if you want me to look at a portfolio. I'm perfectly happy to give you my best review about it. I've done it before, and it's no problem for me if you want me to do that. But otherwise, I've really enjoyed having you guys in class. I have a couple. I believe I still have 2 more project reviews left to do because there were some issues with uploads, but I'll get them done tonight. Also, I actually finished everyone else's review that I was able to do, but the other issue I'm having is I have to contact CGMA because they're telling me my drive, the Google Drive that houses all of the recorded video reviews is now full, which I don't know how that's possible, but I'm going to have to contact them because I can't share a link to those review videos until I fix that. But I will do that this week. And yeah, that'll be up as soon as I get that. I will post a link or post a notification that things are reviewable. So thanks so much, guys. It's been fun, and I look forward to hearing about your progress. Take care. Bye-bye.